Yes, I'm back, Rosemary. But I'm just so agitated. I actually feel sorry for our regular guest here, Martin Van Staden from the Free Market Foundation, because I'm angry. I'm really angry. All racists make me angry. And I came across this thing in the Sowetan. There's the protests happening in Klipspruit West over the school. Now, I don't know what the history there is, but when we engage, there's a way of engaging. People in South Africa are forever protesting. We say things to each other, sometimes offensive things because democracy's like that, but sometimes you've got to draw the line somewhere. Now, I don't understand how a human being in this day and age sits down and writes this. This commentator in the Sowetan calls themselves VMASH, and they're responding to the burning of the bus in Klipspruit. And this is what she says. She's talking about colored people. She says, let these rape products have their wish of preferred principle. And then we must start taking out all coloreds from all PSL, NFD, Mutsepe League, and SAB leagues. All these teams must give all so-called colored players their clearances. All black Africans managed municipalities must stop rendering any kind of basic services to all colored areas. We must start our own apartheid system for all those races who benefited under the Afrikaners' rule. It's time we become racists ourselves. We are tired of becoming victims all the time. Even the cultureless, mad bloods hate us. And this kind of vitriol goes on with other people. This Stop Looting essay simply called half castes. Others say these products of apartheid's Immorality Act had always perceived themselves as white, hence their racist character. Arrest those hooligans. I don't know what to say. I mean, I think people, whatever race you identify yourself as, you should really be angry that in this day and age there are South Africans talking like this, saying things like this. How do you call human beings the products of rape? There's quite an interesting response that somebody gives here. What are they saying? Sorry for that period of dead air. What you have written is incredibly sad. The red mist of anger clouding your brain makes you write the most retrogressive, racist and vile comments I've ever seen. How dare you reduce people to products of rape? If colored people are indeed the products of rape, as you have stated, and part of their genesis is black, then does that make black people rapists? Should colored people institute a class action lawsuit of rape against all other races for having created these products of rape? The Nazis would have been really proud to have you amongst their ranks. You put Himmler, Goebbels, and Hitler to shame in your racist ethnic cleansing diatribe. But I'm just horrified. I'm really, really horrified that, first of all, the Sowetan allowed something like this. This is hate speech in the extreme, in the absolute extreme. And for once, I'm at a loss for words. Martin, you're looking at me with a very sad look, but I don't know what to say, really. I'm just at a complete loss for words. That somebody can actually reduce people to being products of rape. How much more dehumanizing can you be than that? Basically, you're saying you are less of a person than I am. You are dehumanizing that person. I mean, others go on basically to reduce colored people to all just being drug abusers. It's just the saddest part for me here is that these are probably young people. And how do you sit down and say to yourself, I am going to put this in the public domain in 2017, 24 years into democracy, and you call people cultureless, you call them products of rape, you call them half-castes, and you call them basically that all they're good for is smoking dick. I'm sorry, listeners. It's it. I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I had quite a few things I wanted to say before we enter this. Look, go to the Sowetan, read. There's an article there. Go to Sowetan online, read the article on the burning of the Patco bus in Klipspruit, and then go and read the comments that are being made. And the worst part is there are people, Penny Sparrow was taken to the Human Rights Commission, has been fined 250,000 Rand for calling black people monkeys. How much do you charge somebody for calling people products of rape, calling them cultureless, so basically calling for ethnic cleansing? Because this statement is calling for the ethnic cleansing of all people who identify themselves as colored, basically from every structure of South Africa. And for me, this sounds like a Rwanda moment when we had genocide. This person is basically calling for genocide against people who identify themselves as coloreds. And this is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. Whether the burning of the bus is justified or not is besides the point. How do you bring rape and the burning of a bus in a service protest issue together? I don't know. I'm just at a complete loss for words. Which brings us to our dysfunctional country. It's the only word I have for it, is that it's dysfunctional. And you know that we have Martin Van Staden with us, who comes quite regularly, is actually going to be Kofifi's legal commentator on the state of the nation, but with your own take on things. And I was reading your article on the reduction of the number of provinces. But before we go there, I just want us to just recap a couple of things that have taken place in this week. It's been such an eventful week. We've had the Guptas claiming that South Africans love them. We've had the Guptas showing off that they've got more money than even if they try to spend it, they could never spend it all. We've got Tom Moyane, the commissioner of SARS. Now it's been discovered that he made more than 5 trips to Dubai and doesn't want to say why he went to Dubai, and went at one of the trips was at a very interesting period. It was the December period when Anuj Singh, the CFO of Eskom that has been suspended, was there, when the 2 sons of the Premier of the Free State, is it the Free State? Yes, was there. Or is it Northwest? Northwest, yes, were there at the time when the PA of the Minister of Public Works, Lynn Brown, was there, and the 3 Gupta brothers were there. There's somebody else, I think Koko was there, the guy that was head of procurement at Eskom, and gave gave his daughter the contracts worth 2 billion. It was at that time that they were all in Dubai. Now, often you hear the media or people saying, I asked the government for a copy of the inquiry into Martin Van Staden. There's an allegation that you've stolen water, and an investigation is held and a report is released, and then we don't get the report. And then the media will ask for the report. And then government will say, no, we can't release it because there's client confidentiality. Now, my question becomes, I'm a shareholder in government because I pay taxes. As a citizen of as a citizen of South Africa, I pay taxes. So when you refuse to give me information that was financed by my taxes, because my taxes pay for that inquiry, you refuse to give me that. And then secondly, my taxes pay your salary. So I'm a shareholder. So are you saying as a shareholder, I'm not entitled to see how my money is at work? And for me, you're a legal researcher, Martin, and I want to understand, can government actually say there's client confidentiality? Is that supplier not my client? Because I pay the bill at the end of the day. I hire government to represent me by voting. But at the end of the day, I'm the employer because I pay the bill.
Yeah, so our constitution, in my opinion, is extremely clear on this. Section 32(1)(a) says everyone has the right to access to any information held by the state and any information that is held by another person and that is required for the exercise or protection of any rights. That's extremely simple. So these reports, the Constitution does not allow for this kind of discretion. Client confidentiality, that's bizarre. It's the first time I've ever heard of that.
No, they say it quite often,
Yeah.
because I know political parties end up having to resort to using PI, that
Yeah.
Access to Information Act.
Yeah,
But my question is, here I am, Rosemary. Why can I not go to a minister and say, I demand that information?
You can.
Because it's my money that paid for that inquiry, and it's my money that was allegedly being abused.
No, you absolutely can. The Promotion of Access to Information Act does allow any person to get an order to have that information released. I believe there are exceptions where government can refuse, although if I had to guess, I think that will only relate to issues of national security. Client confidentiality, that sounds like a very generic thing for government to just dream up and say that this is the reason. And this is not an isolated problem. Something that the Free Market Foundation often has to deal with is that government is mandated to produce a socio-economic impact assessment for any new policy. And government says, yes, we are required and we do them. But those reports never see the light of day because they hold on to them or they never do them. We don't know. So you need to go through this big process to get access to these reports if they exist. So it's not an isolated issue. I think it's a massive rule of law problem. In principle, what you're saying, that you as a taxpayer should obviously be entitled to see that. It's your report. That report has been paid for by your money. You are in fact the owner of that report. So yeah, it's a massive rule of law issue. I don't think government should be able to get away with just making up these watery excuses.
Because one of the things, and again here, I'm putting this as a legal person. One other thing that was said is that Tom Moyane refused to divulge why he was in Dubai, and basically he reserves his right because SARS policies are basically, they telling me SARS policies are more important than my rights.
Yeah, so what may happen, and I think what he's saying there is patently incorrect, because he was there apparently on government business. His business there was definitely paid for by our tax money. What I think he may have an excuse is if whatever he has to divulge might incriminate him in a crime, then he may have the right to say, I can't answer that because that may incriminate me. But I'm not sure what happened, and I doubt he's saying that, because that's basically that'll open a massive can of worms.
That isn't what he said.
Yeah.
Basically, they're saying it's their own policies that they don't have to tell us.
No, that's nonsense. The SARS policy is dreamed up by bureaucrats. They should abide by the law. Their policy cannot overrule the rule of law and the Constitution.
Now, you've been a very busy person. You've been writing quite a few papers on some things. The most recent one, and I'll start with the most recent one, the one of the reduction of the number of provinces from 9 to 6. Now, what rationale is being advanced about the need to reduce the number of provinces?
So government calls this, it's quite bizarre. They say there's a concentration of resources at the provincial level, when in fact service delivery takes place at the local level. And therefore to reduce bureaucracy and so forth, make it, I think there's a cost argument. They would want to reduce the number of provinces so that resources make their way to the correct place, which is municipalities. And I find that absolutely bizarre. In my mind, if the problem is concentration of resources at provincial level, then rather just divert the resources where they need to go, which is local level. And if I'm allowed to be a little bit radical, make all municipalities provinces. That completely solves the problem.
I was about to go there. Why not just scrap the provinces altogether and just have municipalities only?
And give them
because
the power of
provinces.
provinces.
Be an even better cost saving? Because we won't have to pay all these MPLs.
On the government's logic, yes. And I think if we did that, that would be a very substantive manifestation of democracy, whereby power is much closer to the people if our municipalities had provincial powers. And this is on the African National Congress's logic. And that this is what they're saying, that there is a concentration of resources at provincial level, so let's reduce the provinces. That doesn't follow,
it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make financial sense.
Yes.
If you know that the provinces are a problem, how is reducing them to 6 taking the problem away?
No, of course. So to me, it's obvious that this is political rather than governance. There's definitely, I mean, the ANC first proposed this in 2007. So many people are saying this is just corruption.
It coincides with the loss of the Western Cape.
Well, the Western Cape was that not lost in 2009, I believe.
But the city was lost already.
Maybe, yes. Yeah. So I think it's unfair to accuse them simply of being corrupt. But the fact that there is now this push for it again, when the ANC knows full well that there is a lot of political uncertainty, they know that their hold on power is, it's not debatable anymore. Clearly there's some debate going on now. And I think just from a governance and an ethical perspective, maybe what you're proposing is legal. It might be, but I argue not. But from an ethical perspective, the ANC surely should say, okay, we want to do this, but let's wait at least until after the 2019 elections before we even touch this.
Why? When are they looking at doing it then?
Well, they've been talking about it and nothing has happened. I think nothing is still going to happen, but talking about it in 2017, so close to the next national election, I think is reckless. And if they follow up on it and get a presidential commission of inquiry into reducing the provinces, and by the way, the inquiry will conclude that the provinces need to be reduced. So it's not really an inquiry, but I think it's reckless to do it now. But luckily, I also think even if they wanted to, they won't succeed in it. I think the law is very much on the side of reasonableness and constraint.
If we want to look at intention, maybe we need to look at which provinces are they looking at amalgamating? Which ones are they?
I'm not sure. I have tried looking. I didn't find an answer. I recall from being younger when I saw it on the TV once. It seems like, roughly speaking, we're going to go back to the setup we had prior to the Constitution coming into effect. So the pre 1994 setup. So basically a large Cape province, North Cape, West Cape, East Cape, one province, and then I guess Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and Limpopo. So that's what I saw then. I think it was even fewer provinces that they wanted then. But I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I think they're keeping it vague. I've read up a bit on what they were saying. It's very vague. There's not a lot of specific. They're not specifying really what they're planning to do. So it's vague. It causes uncertainty. I don't think it's particularly good for investor confidence. So if they really want to do it, they need to be clear on what it is they want to do. But of course, one would need to be ignorant to not look at the political implications.
Because my next question is, if they serious, and I know the discussion is pretty serious in the ANC, if the issue is financial, have they actually quantified what the cost saving would be by reducing that?
No, I highly doubt that, just because of experience from other cost-benefit analysis that government apparently does. It's very rarely quantified, and if it is, it's done in a very anti-economic way. For example, I can think of the government's new information and communications technologies policy, where they apparently did do a SIA, but when we read it, it looked very rushed and very recent. Very few numbers, and the government only listed those stakeholders who basically agreed with the policy as its public engagement. The Free Market Foundation, we've led the charge against that policy, it was not mentioned. The stakeholders in the industry that we've engaged with, who have told us about the problems of the policy, they were not mentioned. Their concerns were not mentioned. So no, I highly doubt it's been quantified. I would be surprised if they have looked at conducted a real cost benefit analysis. I doubt it, I should say.
Because if their argument is financial, that's the first thing they should present to us to convince us that, this basically will save the state so much, which can then go into development.
Yeah.
But if they've come up with, they know they're going to have 6 provinces, but and their rationale is that it's financial, but they must show us the cost-benefit analysis.
Yes, so the rule of law is part of our constitutional order. South Africans are very lucky to have it as an explicit part. So Section 1C of the Constitution provides for the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law in South Africa. And one of the principles of the rule of law is that policy, regulation, laws must be reasonable. And that means that it must be evidence-based. And if we don't see the evidence, then it may as well not be evidence-based, because something that's not manifested is just clearly useless. So to comply with the principles of the rule of law, we would need to see some kind of cost-benefit analysis, a bona fide, real, sincerely, and hopefully independently conducted cost-benefit analysis, not one that government does, because when you do your own cost-benefit analysis, you reach the conclusion that you want to reach. So that would need to be done independently by I believe a respected firm or
aren't they getting thin on the ground?
Yeah,
the auditing firms that are respectable.
Unfortunately, yes. So yeah, it's a difficult issue, but I still lean on the side of leave it alone, at least until after the elections. Then we can maybe start talking about it, even though then I would still say that it's simply illegal to reduce the number of provinces in the way that the government seems to want to, because they can't do it by fiat at this stage. They would need to amend the constitution to reduce.
And for them to be able to amend the constitution to implement that, what percentage of the vote would they need in parliament?
Okay, so luckily I believe, so Section 74 of the Constitution provides for how the Constitution should be amended. And because the provinces are named, all 9 of them are named in the Constitution, to reduce the number, you would obviously need to amend the Constitution. But also, the Constitution provides in that section that to change provincial boundaries and provincial institutions, provincial powers, and so forth, the government would need a two-thirds majority in the National Assembly, which is 66%, which they don't have, plus 6 provinces in the National Council of Provinces, which they do have. But then they also need the consent of the provincial legislature or provincial legislatures in question. So
there it has to be 2/3 as well.
That's unclear. The Constitution doesn't say, so that will probably go to the courts if it comes to pass, and the courts will need to decide if it's a simple majority or a 2/3 majority. But in any case, if they want to amalgamate the Western Cape, and the Western Cape will be the only example because it's the only province governed by a different party.
For now.
Yes, for now. If they want to amalgamate it, they would need the Democratic Alliance's majority to do so. And we know that that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so they'll fail with the Western Cape if they try. But I'm not sure how the provincial legislatures look here in the upper parts of South Africa. So they may succeed in Gauteng.
Very fine.
Yes. Oh, well, okay, then they probably won't have the 66% majority. I doubt that. But if they only require a simple majority, it might be a problem.
I have to. I'm sorry, Martin. Today it's community issues. It's good afternoon, Rosemary. This person wants to tweet about a bus that was burned. What about over 20 schools that were burned to the ground in Limpopo? Good afternoon. I'm so upset with the comment about coloureds. If a black person says anything about other races, it's fine, but nothing must be said about black. So sad. Aubrey Nichols. Hi, Rosemary. Very fascinated with you. You are so vibrant and alive. You must tell it like it is. I'm not a racist, but a rationalist, and believe that people of colour are beautiful, even if we are classified as products of rape. Proud to be coloured, anonymous. And I think we're going to be getting a lot of those today, Martin. But let's go back to this, the provinces, the issue of the provinces. I'm asking you now, just for your opinion. Do you think that this would find favour? Okay, let's go back. Never before has the ANC's hold on power been as precarious as it is now.
Yes.
And but they are still the ones who believe that they will govern till Jesus comes. So now let's say hypothetically, they will govern till Jesus comes. Do you believe that this policy of reducing the number of provinces will find acceptance in the ANC ranks? Because if you reduce the number of provinces to 6, it means there's 3 provinces that lose members of parliament, lose political largesse through tenders and the public purse to plunder. Do you think it would find acceptance in ANC ranks?
So I don't really know much about the mood in the ANC at this stage, but I would say that it may, depending on what is offered. So those premiers and their governments and their bureaucrats may be given an offer to join the new provincial government and get new packages, new positions. So it may go down like that at this stage.
But if it's a cost-saving measure,
no, of course,
exactly. How do you retain that bureaucracy?
A government rarely achieves the end that it sets out to achieve. So one of the principles of economics that's really important that people don't know is that there's always unintended consequences for every government intervention. And with things like this, usually government will not achieve what it sets out to achieve, except if this is political. And then surely the government will probably achieve what it wants. If it comes down to economics, wanting to save money, I doubt it. I don't see them doing that and then reducing taxes or anything like that. It's simply not going to happen. So... yeah, no, I think this is political. It's not governance. It's a matter of politics. And I don't know how the ANC will react to it. Currently, it looks like there's a split, especially of the Ramaphosa faction. I don't know how the deputy president feels about this. I don't know if he's made his opinion known about reducing the number of provinces. But yeah, so I'm not sure how they will react. But depending on what is offered to the former people in those governments, they'll probably be happy with it.
Kofifi listeners, interestingly, the article on Klipspruit West has disappeared off the Sowetan Live page. So I don't know if they were listening, but if you look at the Kofifi Facebook page, you will find the screen grab there. And my suggestion to you is send it out on your social media pages to everybody as well. And I think it's time that don't burn anything down, but protest. I think it's just wrong. It's just downright wrong. But they have removed the entire article off the page, and it's not appearing anywhere at all, which is actually very strange, which is very interesting. But people, this is one thing, Martin, we'll come back. We've got a show on a Wednesday called The Vibe, and it's hosted by Blanca and James. Now, Blanca, okay, she's a graduate with a BCom logistics, but she's an extremely successful model. If you look at the Fire and Ice advert for Revlon, she's the face. Fresh Pack Rooibos tea on television, she's the face. You go into Milady's, she's the face. Macro, your catalog, she's the face. If you look in your Avon book, she's a face there. The latest Destiny magazine, there's a couple of pages with her. The latest Bona magazine, there's a couple of pages there. So you've got quite a media, a brand that's on Kofifi. But one thing she pointed out, she said, colored people are not active on social media. And I couldn't argue with her on that because I'm not active on social media. And that's because I'm too busy being active on the mic here. But please, people, become active on social media. Don't lower your standards by swearing or calling people names or resorting to the same racial diatribe that these people are engaging in. Maybe just give each other support, love each other, send each other messages of hey, big ups, they're positive messages. But also protest. Send your tweets to Panyaza. Send them to David Makura. Send them to Paul Mashatile. Send them to Barbara Creasy. Send them to Lebogang Maile. Who are the other MECs? Send them to Ismail Vadi. I know he'll reply. Send them to all the rest. But tweet them and tell them you are offended in the extreme and you expect them to say something about it, especially Panyaza Lisufi. But let's go on with our topic. Sorry, Martin, you came, and you and I always have some really deep discussions.
Yeah. Rosemary, if I may, just on this topic of the
Yes.
article in the Sowetan, it seems to be indicative of a acceptance that there is no respect for the rule of law in South Africa. So you quoted a part where I think the author said that basic government services need to be denied to colored individuals in towns and so on. And that is indicative of a larger problem in South Africa, whereby it seems that people think whatever they ask in large enough numbers, government must simply do. And that comes back to this issue of amending the constitution recklessly and out of a knee-jerk, emotional, passion-filled political crusade, and I think that's problematic. I think the rule of law appears in our constitution for the very fact that we need to have a respect for the law as something that's somewhat outside of just asking for it to be changed.
There must be a reasoning behind it.
Yes.
But it's become a thing of might is right. It's
Yes.
not about reasoning and logic or does this make sense. I think the mining charter that this Zwane guy put out is a typical example. I mean, you don't need to be a genius to know that what he wrote is a load of garbage.
Yes.
And is totally illegal and
Yes.
unworkable.
Yes.
And the worst thing possible for the economy.
Yeah, no, of course. And this is something that I've mentioned a few times on the show, is that government doesn't, I mean, they say they care about the economy.
They care about it because, as long as they can take out of it.
But there's always been a disconnect between politics and economics, and one of my associates at the Free Market Foundation used to say that history is a struggle between politics and economics, and politics usually wins in the short run, but economics is always going to get you in the long run. So if you go with mining charters, yes, it's going to look brilliant, it's transformation, black economic empowerment, government is doing something. This is the impression that is created. There is an intervention to bring about greater access to South Africa's mineral wealth. But if you're able to fast forward South Africa 20, 25 years down the line, there will be no mining industry in South Africa.
They'll have killed
and
it because there'll be
already
no
there.
money.
Yes.
And this is the part that actually it really grates when I hear people regurgitating slogans coined by politicians.
Yes.
And you ask them, when you say that 51% of all mine shaft sinking must be black, do you understand how much it costs to do that? And where will that money come from? Because if you're saying it must be black people, they're going to have to find that money somewhere. Where are they going to find it? Because we don't have enough in South Africa because mining is a very expensive business.
Yes.
And the other thing people fail to understand is that mining is a long-term business. There's no short-term returns in mining. For at least the first 5 years, you don't make any money. You know, and these, like the one of land expropriation
Yes.
without compensation. Right, expropriate all the land. And then, are you going to eat that sand? You know, for me, that becomes the question. Are you going to, and does everybody want to be a farmer?
Yeah, no, of course.
You know,
not.
and is there enough arable land in South Africa? These are all the things that we don't question. We just accept, we regurgitate, and we shout, hey, Amandla, Viva, and, you know, get the food parcel. And then tomorrow, when there's no money for social grants, then you'll want to burn. There'll be nothing left to burn by then because there's no money, you know.
So we have what I would describe as political immaturity in South Africa. So in South Africa, when we talk about things like land reform and mining and so forth, the constitution is very rarely mentioned. Very rarely. In countries like the United States, that's all they talk about is the constitution, the constitution, the constitution. But in South Africa, we have people like Jami Manye and the ANC Women's League. They're saying, no, this constitution thing, it's getting in our way a bit. So let's go back to parliamentary supremacy, which we had before apartheid ended, which meant that government does whatever it feels like doing. And this is becoming a growing movement where people are seeing the constitution as a
stumbling block
or a barrier, an evil barrier to transformation, which is simply not true. The constitution
but isn't transformation just a euphemism for looting?
Well, it's become that.
There is a need for transformation, but under the present regime, are they really talking about transformation? Because all along we were being told the Guptas are a transformation story. Yes, there was transformation for them.
Yes.
It was financial
Yes.
in a big way, but it...
So we need to look at the substance over the form of things that's happening, and very few people inquire into really the substance of the slogan. So radical economic transformation is this new buzz phrase that's going around. Everyone thinks, yes, we need radical economic transformation, but what government proposes is not radical because, and I mean, this is something that a lot of let's call them conservative people would disagree with me about, is that I think that government, its transformation program, does pretty much exactly what the apartheid government does. So under apartheid, expropriation of land was a big part of governance, and you couldn't challenge it because there was no constitution.
It was a parliamentary discussion.
Exactly. So anyone's land could have been taken. This includes white people, and nothing constrained government. And now this radical economic transformation, the things that are being proposed in terms of radical economic transformation are just doing things to the extent that the apartheid government did them. Real radical economic transformation would be to embrace the rule of law, something that South Africa has never known. There's a lot of talk about the rule of law, but we've never really embraced the rule of law.
Particularly now that all those institutions are totally dysfunctional.
Yeah, the public protector and her recommendations.
Yes, let's talk about the Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about a little bit. The legality of what... I mean, the part that really got me was when she turned around and said it was a typo. Now, how is an entire paragraph a typo?
I actually have it. I have it all quoted here. So what the Constitution says at this moment is, and I quote, "The primary object of the South African Reserve Bank is to protect the value of the currency in the interest of balanced and sustainable economic growth in the Republic." That's what the Constitution currently provides, and that is what reserve banks around the world do. It's their nature. That is what they do. This is what the public protector in her report said, and I quote what the Constitution should read if she got her way. "The primary object of the South African Reserve Bank is to promote balanced and sustainable economic growth in the Republic while ensuring that the socio-economic well-being of the citizens are protected." That would have turned the Reserve Bank into SASA. It would turn it into a social security
it would have turned it
organization.
into the Department of Economic Affairs.
Yes, it would.
Because she's basically saying they must determine economic policy.
Yes.
And the Reserve Bank doesn't determine economic
Welfare
policy.
policy as well, welfare policy. And,
Yes.
And the
social part, yes, that's welfare.
Yes, exactly. And this would really... I know a lot of people say this, but this particularly would have put us on the Zimbabwe-Venezuela path. Because when
aren't we sliding there?
We are, but...
but we are fighting.
Yeah, so we're fighting, and we still have institutions, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. Or
no, we won't let it happen.
Yeah, of course, but this particularly would have put us there, because in both Venezuela and Zimbabwe, when this massive hyperinflation happened, where everyone's life savings just became worthless because of the increase in the money supply, is when the politicians captured their reserve banks. So when Mugabe captured the central bank in Zimbabwe, and when Chavez captured the central bank in Venezuela, they printed money.
And they basically became their personal piggy banks.
Yes, so that is why the Reserve Bank particularly needs to be very highly guarded. I mean, a lot of people would say, yeah, I'm defending some kind of system of white privilege or Western colonialism, this institution. But no, this organization ensures that little money we have in the bank retains
there.
Yeah, so if you have 10,000 rand in the bank now, it's not a lot. If government gets control of the Reserve Bank and prints more money, that you'll be able to buy bread if you're lucky with 10,000 rand. So the Reserve Bank really needs to be protected. It's not, and I say this with love for democracy in my heart. The Reserve Bank should not play in democracy. The Reserve Bank is a technical institution. It has this very particular function, and it should stick to that. It needs to be filled with experts, not politicians. And
with technocrats.
Yes, with technocrats, and it should fulfill its mandate while government, which is elected, does the politics. Just leave the Reserve Bank alone, because if you fiddle with it, we're in big trouble.
You know, and I think, listeners, this is something, just to put it in very simple terms, why it's so important for the Reserve Bank to be the custodian of safeguarding our currency is we had a situation in Brazil, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and now Venezuela. You get up in the morning and you don't know what the price of bread is. At midday, when you go to buy the same price of bread, the same loaf of bread, the price has changed again. In the evening, it's changed again. That's when you have a dysfunctional Reserve Bank that is not protecting your currency. When the Reserve Bank, as it is today, makes sure that tomorrow, when you go and draw your 10 rand out, it is still worth 10 rand like it was yesterday, and not worth 1 rand the following day. That's where this thing of protecting the value of the currency is. And it is so important, because socio-economic policy is useless if you have a currency that has no security. Let me put it this way, security of tenure. That basically you won't know from 1 hour to the next what it's worth. So your socio-economic policies can go out the window. So it's of primary importance that the Reserve Bank stays out of the clutches of politicians and remains a technocratic institution. That's one place where bureaucracy is welcomed.
Yes, no, and I mean, I sympathize that people don't like that bureaucracy. Often it seems like the Reserve Bank is making bad choices, but really it needs to be left alone. And one of the other reasons why this is more important, because if the Reserve Bank is captured politically, what the government is in effect going to do if it prints money, it is expropriating all your wealth without having to go through any constitutional process, which is regulated by Section 25, which is the expropriation of property. But if government puts billions of rands extra into the money supply in the country, it wipes out all your wealth. So, and I'm glad the public protector has backed off now. She
had no choice.
Yes, I'm surprised, and I'm glad that the African National Congress and government generally said no, we can't do this.
But Martin, I want to that she didn't write that statement.
Sure. Okay,
she
of
was
course.
given that state because let's look at what was she writing about. It was the Absa lifeboat.
Yes.
So where did this? It was just plonked in there out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere instructed her. You've got to put this there because we've been hearing coming out of the ANC, Jesse Duarte amongst them, saying that basically the Reserve Bank needs to be taken over by the politicians.
Yeah.
They have been saying it.
No, of course. There's definitely some who would like to see that happen. And I mean, I guess it's the same group as the ANC Women's League who think we need to go back to parliamentary supremacy so that government can just do what it wants.
Whatever they want.
And of course, in the interests of the people, as they always say. But of course, that when people start talking like that, you should know that it's the government is going to do things in its own interests. And this is the nature of a constitution. This is also something I wrote in that article. A constitution is not transient. It's not something that we have now and it needs to help everyone. It's a lifeboat and we change it when we want. A constitution is literally part of the long haul. If you create a constitution, it needs to be as inflexible, as fixed as possible. That is the point of a constitution. It's not there to help
Willy-nilly.
government. Yeah, so that's, I believe the Constitution of the United States was one of the first constitutions. It came about after a revolution where the people said, listen, we don't want government, and the United Kingdom, which they declared independence from, still has a sovereign parliament, so it's a entrenched thing there. But we don't want government to be able to do whatever we want. We want some certainty in our lives. We want to know that tomorrow the government isn't simply going to take what we have or just arbitrarily, which is unfortunately something our government is very good at, arbitrariness. We don't want that to happen, and that's what a constitution does. It says, government, you can do what you want within the bounds that has been set for you. And if we keep expanding those bounds by amending the constitution when it becomes inconvenient, then it's redundant. We may as well get rid of the thing. So it's important that the constitution needs to be as inflexible, as fixed as possible. We have had amendments, fair amendments, which don't really change much, but when you get into substantive amendments, we're getting into dangerous territory. If the U.S. Constitution has been amended in its 250 years, I believe, only around, I speak under correction, 17 times.
And after like years of fighting for whatever it was.
Yes. So and when there's a constitutional proposal, it rarely, if ever, gets into the constitution because it requires broad public support. In South Africa, no, our constitution is much more flexible to be amended. But in the time since we've had it, 1996 was when this constitution was enacted. We've amended it as also 17 times, but this is in 23 years.
Oh my word.
And that's not good. I mean,
that isn't good.
most of those amendments are technical. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
But still, when we wrote the constitution, we should have said, okay, come what may, we're going to stick with what we have here, at least until it becomes really a state-destroying problem, which it certainly did not. So we need to protect the constitutional inflexibility. And I know this is very technical for many people. Their eyes will glaze over. But I mean, it's very important to your daily lives. The stability we have in South Africa is a direct consequence of having a very inflexible constitution.
Basically, the constitution is our ability as the non-politicians to hold government power, basically to rein them in.
Yes.
Now, I know this, we're running out of time, but I've got to pick your mind about this. Vote of no confidence on Tuesday.
I don't know. I've been reading some scary things. I think I read an op-ed that said that if the president is removed, he'll call in the army. That's the kind of thing.
Call in the army.
The former president will call in the army. Let's put it like that. If he's removed, but
But we've had another
so.
president removed, and there was no army called out.
I think they're trying to imply Mr. Zuma is a different kind of president, but I don't think that'll happen. I'm leaning on this side of the president will carry on as is. He won't be removed. That's what I don't think there's enough support from the ANC side to remove the president.
Now, as a constitutionalist, now the ANC position, party versus state.
Our constitution allows this, so we need to. I mean, a lot of people want to say that this is unconstitutional. The party needs to be after the state first. Unfortunately, the system that we have encourages party over state or party and state.
But the DA is going to charge Gwede Mantashe.
Yeah.
Because in terms of, oh my word, I forgot, the Privileges and whatever Act in Parliament, you cannot threaten, sway, coerce a member of Parliament to behave in a particular way.
Well, our courts have held that the deployed members of Parliament are from their parties. Their mandate resides in the party because you voted for the party, and therefore the party can remove members of Parliament. So that in itself is a legal threat, essentially, that may not be spoken, but it's always implied, whereby if you don't do what your party says, your party can say, thank you for your service, you are now dismissed from Parliament, and that would be legal. Now, any direct and overt threats, sure, that's probably not allowed, but if we get to the substance of the matter, we don't really have representatives, we have parties, and what the party says goes. So that is why I'm leaning towards no confidence is going to fail, because all of these party members, unless the National Executive Committee of the ANC is on their side, that's unclear. But if the National Executive Committee of the ANC is on the president's side, which it seems to me it is, all these members who would vote against Mr. Zilman know that they would be removed, and
but legally, they can challenge that removal now. Because there is a separation of powers between the party and they were acting as members of Parliament and not as ANC members. Because when they're in that house, they are members of Parliament first.
Yes.
And as a taxpayer, I'm very annoyed because I pay that member of Parliament's salary, not the ANC or the DA or the EFF.
Yeah.
So shouldn't you be acting in my interests?
On the surface, yes, that's how it works. Unfortunately, or fortunately in a way, we have a proportional representation system which allows smaller parties to get access to Parliament. But that means that the mandate resides with the party instead of the member. So the vote goes to the party, and if members of Parliament vote against what the party said, then in a way that member is rejecting the so-called mandate that the party got from the people. So in text, yes, the Parliament needs to act in the interests of the people, but if you have our system, it's going to do what its party mandates it to do, unfortunately, and that's just the nature of our system.
You know, I'm trying to find an angle as a citizen, because I pay those people salaries.
Yes, no, of course.
Can I not sue them?
No.
I'm not being facetious. I'm being dead serious here. Can I not sue them for not representing me?
Well, that would be ideal. Unfortunately, no, because the court should likely see it as a political matter, and that Parliament is the duly elected legislature of the country, and that it can't listen to every person which has a demand. But public participation, which we have talked about before, is mandated by the Constitution, which means that the people need to be listened to. And if it appears that Parliament simply said, okay, yeah, say what you want, we're going to do this, in other words, it's not bona fide public consultation or public participation, then Parliament would be acting unconstitutional, in my opinion. That's my reading of the Constitution. I think a lot of people would disagree with me. So there needs to be some kind of connection between what the people want and what Parliament does. That's what I think the Constitution mandates. But that is a very blurry area, and I'm not sure if I think the courts would agree strictly with me in that regard. But in principle, yes. So I'm a libertarian, of course, and this means that as long as I pay for government, government should do whatever I want, or it should stop taking my money and let me do my own thing. So it has those two choices, no other choice. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, that's not how it works. But in principle, I agree with you completely. Parliament needs to do what the people ask it to do.
Now, Martin, the EFF and UDM have said if the speaker doesn't have a secret ballot, they are ready to go to the Constitutional Court. What are they going to be challenging?
Well, I'm assuming it's going to be based on the Constitutional Court's previous judgment, which found that it's the Speaker's choice, although I don't think that's going to be successful because the court said the speaker can decide. But the court also said it needs to be, I think the court said, in the interest of South Africa and so forth. So the EFF and the UDM might challenge it on the grounds that this is simply politics. The speaker didn't make a governance choice, but made a political choice. I think Baleka Mbete knows that if it's a secret ballot, she's probably going to be quote-unquote redeployed very soon in the future. So I don't know what the speaker is going to decide. I think we're all hoping for a secret ballot now, although that comes with its own baggage. But yeah, I don't know. But I think self-interest will overrule what the politicians decide to do.
Martin, we didn't talk about the constitutional the changes. I wanted us to go point by point on what it is, these changes that the governing party wants to make to the constitution. Can we put that one on hold, and we're going to have another discussion about that, because as usual we've run out of time because we live in interesting times, don't we? Thank you, Martin Van Staden from the Free Market Foundation, our own legal analyst here. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you for having me, Rosemary.
This is Kofifi FM 97.2. Kofifi FM, where it all began.
Hey, don't touch that dial. This is Kofifi FM 97.2, where it all began.
The dial is 97.2. Kofifi FM is where you're at. Stay tuned.
Kofifi FM News.
Top stories at the hour 2 with myself, Chantal Wilson, on Kofifi FM 97.2. Good afternoon. In our headlines for this afternoon, the Reserve Bank launches another court bid against the Public Protector. Companies asked to release workers for anti-Zuma protests, and mom arrested for killing her baby.